Great, thanks for coming out, guys. If you want, you can come closer so you can see. But yeah, so I'm actually a high school student, part of this program which works on creating human accelerators. So I've been learning about really emerging technologies like blockchain and studying how we can use these to solve really big problems in the world. So I've been building my own applications and projects, working with really cool companies, and so I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you guys about how you can use this technology and what are the opportunities for you to start building and innovating in this space. So our world is so data-driven right now. If you think about almost every aspect of your life, there's tons of data being collected about you all the time. From more complex operations like your health records that are being stored in your hospital's database, to just simple things like using Google Maps and having sensory and geographic information about you being stored on Google server. What's crazy is that traditionally this was seen as a really bad thing, right? We wanted our data to always be very private and secure, something that only we could see. Because once it got out there, we didn't really know how this was being utilized, how companies were using it, but also how people were using our data. But in today's day and age, data has almost become something so average, so normal for people to have this being spread around. And it's almost like if I asked all of you guys in this room, you wouldn't really know where your data is right now. We think that it's just stored within our phone or on our laptop, really secure. But reality is it's not. And I think that's where things get really scary. And because this has become a reality, I think that cybercrime has actually become a huge crisis of our day and age. There's tons of information being collected, but also what's crazy about it is that we try to achieve data privacy, right? We want our information to be very private. That's not the issue here. The issue is that we can't control who sees this information, how institutions, companies, parties, and people are using it once it's out there. And because of this, I think data has almost become something so normal for us. And today your data is actually worth less than $1, which is crazy. If I had to get all of your data right now, I could probably spend like $50 and get all of the information that you have. And this is simply because these big corporations and big companies are taking all of this data, in return giving you some sort of service or giving you some sort of product for it that we call, and we think that it's free, but reality is that it's not, and you're paying in the way of giving this personal information and giving away your personal freedom. But that's not a shock, right? It's not a shock that our data is worth less than $1, that we have huge issues with data privacy. But the thing is that 10 years ago, your data was worth $150. And we can reach that state again, and it's all possible with a switch of mindset. For the past 8 months, I've been studying problems just like this, thinking about how we can fundamentally change society and how we've been doing things traditionally for the past few years and centuries. And I started to question things, and after I realized one simple thing, and it's that we don't have a choice right now. For example, take Facebook. Let's say you log onto the platform right now. It's free. It's really easy to create a new account. And we think that it's free, but reality is we're paying in the way of our data. And in return, we're being given this service and being given these products that they're selling to us. But I started to question a lot of things and think, what if we could just change our financial and business models and the way that things are running right now? What if we could pay? What if I was willing to actually pay on Facebook to have my data be private? There's no option for me to do that right now. It's like there's no choice, right? You go on there, you can't really choose what's public, what's private. But what if I could do that and I paid Facebook or any other social media company to do that? And what if we completely changed that, right? What if we completely owned all of our information now, and now these companies are reaching out to us, and they're paying us to use this information, give us some sort of service, and then we're paying them for that. It becomes this new financial model that we haven't really thought about it. It's like completely changing the way we do things. But it's not just an issue of data privacy. I think this is a fundamental issue that will impact every aspect of our lives and some of the core industries. Take healthcare, like being able to manage supply chains or being able to manage your healthcare records, or finance. Simple things like doing transactions overseas is something that's so complicated right now. And there's so much high vulnerability within banks and places that hold tons of our financial information. And digital identity, right? Not being able to have your own identity in society. And that's a really, really scary thing. So for the past 8 months, I've been working on solving these really important issues, and I want to tell you a little bit about how I've been doing this. So I got really interested, I got really passionate about looking into billion-dollar opportunities and leveraging these technologies, which in my mind are tool sets for us to unlock great opportunities that nobody's really thinking about. So I've been speaking at conferences all over the world, working with tons of really cool companies. This summer I'm going to be interning at Toronto Dominion Bank, working on a digital identity platform to create a much more safe and secure platform for people to verify who they are as a person. And a month ago, I was also in Switzerland working with another company within their supply chain, automating with blockchain and machine learning. So after doing a lot of studies, talking to tons of industry leaders, I actually realized that we're looking at technology as just technology. We're not looking at it as anything more. And I realized that our world is really inefficient. There's so many problems, but we don't actually have a lot of smart people working on solving really important problems. And that's where I got interested in starting to innovate and starting to solve these problems. So I got involved with this program called the Knowledge Society, or TKS. And it's basically changed my life because I'm 16, from Toronto, just an average high school student. And after, learning and being engaged with these technologies, I realized how much potential I really have. I've been studying really emerging technologies that are shaping our future, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, genomics, our genetic information. But the three technologies that I got excited about were artificial intelligence. So I developed machine learning algorithms that allow us to actually diagnose pneumonia and malaria with a 90 to 95% efficiency rate. Virtual reality, creating gaming apps, training apps for people to enter this completely new immersive reality. And just recently, nanotechnology, studying things like quantum dots or artificial atoms that you can, which you can change on a molecular level and use to harness solar power. Or things like being able to take carbon dioxide in our air, add catalysts and nanoparticles to convert it into useful products like plastic or oil, which we use in our daily lives. But the one technology, of course, that we're all here for that I got really, really interested in was blockchain. But not really the blockchain that a lot of us think about. Because I think when we think about this technology, we think about like crypto, Bitcoin, and just tokens. But I went back to the basics and I was like, this technology, like, what does it really do, right? The idea of decentralization is so sick. Like, it's so interesting because it's changing the way that we do things. For example, let's take healthcare, right? It lets you have all your healthcare records stored in one place. What it allows you to do now is if a hacker was to take that information, it would impact a lot more people. So we're increasing risk and not maximizing for more security. But on a decentralized platform, what we're doing is the exact opposite. We're decreasing risk and we're increasing our security. And that's exactly how it impacts things like identity, healthcare, and finance. Basically any industry that you can think of. And so I started out with healthcare because I realized there's so much potential, and this is one of the largest industries in the world. And I found out about this issue specifically within the pharma industry of counterfeit medicine, which is absolutely crazy because around 1 out of every 10 medicine in our world, 10%, is actually counterfeit medicine. And if you look into specific areas like Africa and India, these percentages rise to 30 to 40%. That's crazy. Just imagine going to the store and having almost half of the medication that you're getting not be authentic. And this industry is also causing tons of deaths, around 1.5 million deaths every single year. That's literally more than I think the population of San Diego. It's absolutely insane. And so I decided to apply my prerequisite knowledge of blockchain to solve this issue. And I used Truffle, Solidity's Ethereum, and I used Ethereum and then I used Truffle to deploy this smart contract. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this just works physically and show you guys some code, just really sample generic stuff. So the physical flow works with your supplier. Starts with the supplier, then you have your carrier, you have your manufacturer, distributor, all the way till it reaches the consumer. That's what happens physically. And then also, let's say you have a drug packet. What's really happening is you have this QR code, which is unique to each drug. And this is attached to a hash within each block. So what each person, as part of the supply chain, is doing is they're verifying and authenticating to ensure that there's no sort of second wholesaler or repackaging that happens within the process. And then within the blockchain itself, tons of information is being recorded. For example, let's take the supplier. Information like the certificate of origin, batch numbers, and assembly data is being recorded. And then for distributor, things like the receiving date, the storage location, and what is the packaging of the product. As a consumer, you're verifying the consumer ID, the invoice number, the order number, as well as when the product was received. For each transaction, there's a new block being added to the chain, and then within the smart contract, what it's doing is it's automating a lot of the processes that we do right now manually. So it's matching the order and the invoice and the shipment. It's doing the quality check for you and the pay supplier. And once the product is out from, after it's being shipped, what it's also doing is it's updating the inventory levels. So this is some like really basic, simple template of a smart contract and the code that I used to build this. So I started out by defining who the owner of the smart contract is. And then the SKU, which is just a number unique to each product, to map that to a specific item. And then what you're doing is you're defining the state of that item. So where is that medication or drug within the supply chain? So it can be for sale, it can be sold, is it shipped, or has it been received already? And then that's just not enough. You also have to define more information and state about the item. Essentially, if it has been shipped, for example, who shipped it? When will it be received? Who are you sending it to? So it's verifying all of that within this, and you're defining that. And then you're creating an event for that to happen. And now again, you're verifying who is the owner of the contract before you move on to giving functionality to the modifiers. So essentially, this is taking all of the events that you created and giving it functionality. So for example, let's say you have the for sale modifier. It would require them to take the given SKU and state that for sale, for example. So that was a little bit of the code and general template that I used. This is what the product looks like right now. And it's noting down key information like who is the manufacturer, what is the ID of the product, who's the current holder, that could be a drugstore, it could be a doctor, and what is the current location of the drug. So that's just one industry, healthcare. There's so much more potential. I've been also looking at just managing healthcare records. That's a huge issue where people don't actually know where their information is and what database it's being held in, especially when there's really poor infrastructure within a lot of developing nations. Then I moved on to finance. Obviously, finance is a natural industry for blockchain. And this can go from simple things like doing overseas transactions, but what I got interested in mostly was real estate. Especially being from Toronto where housing prices are like crazy, I was like, I need to solve this issue. And so I looked at real estate asset management. So what I looked at specifically was how can we use the idea of partition ledgers, so partial ownership, to basically allow people to own parts of the house, create liquidity for that, but also help to make exchanges of property and land ownership a lot easier. So I developed a platform that allows you to basically manage all of your properties and then allows you to also transact with other people, exchange, and figure out who is the current owner. And so really what it's doing is it's allowing you to take a percentage of a house. And so in theory, it's helping reduce the actual cost of the house. And as you own that part of the house, you have to pay for that part. And then recently I started to get into digital identity, and I think this is like really, really crazy because it's a really huge issue, but we aren't really tackling it heads on right now. So this summer, as I mentioned before in my presentation, I'm working with Toronto Dominion Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Canada, to actually help roll out one of their digital identity platforms. So it's called Verified Me, and essentially what it's doing is it's taking key identifiers that you would use to verify your identity. These can be things like your username, email, passport, and any sort of like government issued IDs. You can put this on this digital platform, and now as a user you have a profile full of this populated data. And what you can do is use this to access different services. So whether that be like, let's say you want to open up an insurance account, and this company is requesting certain data for you. The goal is to have almost like a digital wallet, right? Imagine having a digital wallet, just like your physical wallet right now, that you carry with you all the time. And this digital wallet has a lot of the key data pieces that you always need, right? Every time you go to like stores, it's asking you to fill in the same stuff. Like, I need your signature, I need your name, I need your email. What if you could just autofill that, right? That's a waste of time. You don't need that right now. And so that's exactly what this platform hopes to do, and it hopes to do that decentralized so that there's no sort of third party facilitating a lot of the transactions like they're happening right now. And so, just to recap, we looked at 3 core industries. We looked at healthcare, we looked at finance, and we looked at digital identity. But in reality, there's so much more opportunity out there. And that's what I think I want to ponder on, is you guys as developers and as thought leaders in this space, you have the prerequisite knowledge to understand how this technology works. Now what you need to start looking at is how can you apply this to big problems in the world? How can you actually impact people and create billion-dollar opportunities to solve these issues that have been ongoing for so long? And so I really like this quote, and I think that one of my mentors said this to me, and it's like changed my life ever since. And it's, in order to achieve unconventional success, we need to follow an unconventional path. Just think about that, because really I think a lot of people when they're thinking about what they want to do or creating a company, they're just thinking about how can I maximize value, right? Everyone's figuring out how can I maximize my value, how can I create a product that makes me a ton of money. But when they're thinking about that, they're doing the exact same stuff as everyone else. You can't expect yourself to do the exact same thing as everyone else and have a different result. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're thinking of in the wrong way. And the second we start to realize the potential we can really have, especially with emerging technologies, start to look at them as tool sets rather than just a technology, we can do so much more with our knowledge. And I think the core idea here is that you can decide this now, right? We know that there's so many opportunities. I highlighted some of them, and I'm just a 16-year-old so passionate about making impact and solving these problems. You guys have been in this industry for so long, and you have the knowledge and the companies and the experience to do this. So I challenge you all to start conversation, start to think about how you can use this technology in your day-to-day lives. And you can start with this simple question. Just like, what do you think the future will look like with this technology? And is this a future that you want to live in? Is this a future people will want to live in? And if it is, then you should start to reverse engineer. Figure out how can you start to create that future. Because if you don't have a vision, if you're not thinking unconventionally, then there's no point in doing what you're doing if it's not going to add real value. And I think at this point, we all have the tool sets to do that. And so that's how I want to end this off. And I want you guys to start thinking about this and how you can use your tool sets and the stuff that you've been learning from this conference and go back to your companies, go back to your CEOs, and start to cultivate some of these conversations. Thank you. And yeah, if you guys want to connect or have social media, and if you have questions, I'll take them as well. I think we have some time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first, I'm obviously blown away by your story and everything that, like, this entire talk was amazing. So, what are you most passionate about next in this space? You've been in this space long enough now, and you've gone through a couple different industries. What do you think is the most interesting concept that's evolving out of this space?
Yeah, I think the idea of like self-sovereign identity is, and just like a self-sovereign society is super interesting, right? Think about like having like, I almost think of it as like just like what if you could just create like this own town, and like the way I like to think about it is like, what if you had, you know, your own town? What would you do differently in it? How would you run this town? It's like the idea of having just everything be decentralized and self-sovereign society where people own their data, and you know, we're flipping those financial models that I was talking about is so interesting, because you're starting to understand the full potential of this technology. And I really do think that in order for people to understand how this technology works, we need to have like a really big company come out, especially now, that is using it for social good, so that people can really understand how it impacts their lives. So I think like self-sovereign society isn't something that is really interesting, and I think that will have like a huge impact in creating a really interesting future. Thanks.